What if I told you that some of the most dangerous weeds in your yard aren't the ones with thorns or bad smells, but the pretty little plants you've walked past 100 times without a second thought? And the scary part is, a lot of them don't look dangerous at all, until a curious grandkid picks a berry, a dog chews a leaf, or you brush against the wrong sap on a warm afternoon. Because the truth is, this danger isn't hidden in pharmaceutical labs. It's not coming from some chemical factory, and it's definitely not the expensive stuff at the garden center with a fancy warning label. It's growing for free along fences, under bird feeders, beside patios, and sometimes right in the flower bed you've been proud of for years. Most people don't know this, but a handful of common yard plants can cause everything from severe skin burns and breathing trouble to vomiting, seizures, and even heart issues, with just a small bite or little exposure. And what makes them so risky is how easily they spread, how normal they look, and how fast an innocent moment can turn into an emergency. Stick around, because number 11 on this list is so sneaky it often gets planted on purpose for its flowers, yet it's been linked to serious poisonings, and experts have had to issue repeated warnings about it. And number 3 is so powerful that even a tiny amount can be dangerous for pets and children, and most homeowners don't realize they're practically inviting it to multiply every time they mow or pull it the wrong way. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, because we post new videos every week that will help you protect your home, grow a safer yard, and build the kind of old-fashioned, common-sense self-reliance that still matters today. So, let's get into it. Number 1. Oleander, the gorgeous killer hedge. Oleander is one of those plants that looks like it was literally designed to trick homeowners. It's evergreen, it grows fast, it's drought tough, it pumps out those pink, red, or white flowers like it's trying to win a beauty contest, and landscapers have used it for decades as the easy privacy screen. You'll still see it sold and planted because it photographs beautifully. It handles heat like a champ, and people think, it's just a pretty flowering shrub. What could go wrong? Here's what could go wrong. Basically, everything. Oleander isn't just kind of toxic. It's one of the most dangerously poisonous ornamental plants commonly found in American yards. The leaves, flowers, sap, stems, every part is loaded with cardiac glycosides that can mess with the heart. Kids who like to pick flowers, dogs that chew sticks, goats nibbling along a fence line, even adults who break a branch and get sap on a cut. This is not a wash your hands and move on plant. And it doesn't need to spread like mint to be a nightmare. Its destructive power is that it sits there looking harmless while being a serious poisoning risk 24/7. Even the smoke from burning trimmings can be dangerous, which means one bad bonfire cleanup day can turn into a medical emergency. And once you decide you don't want a literal poison factory growing 5 feet from your porch, here's the part nobody tells you at the garden center. Removal is a hassle, and it's a hazardous one. You can't just yank it out in flip-flops and toss the branches on the compost pile like it's normal yard waste. You've got to treat it like toxic material. Gloves, long sleeves, eye protection, careful bagging, and no chipping it into mulch for your beds. And if it's an older plant with a big woody root crown, you'll be wrestling a heavy, stubborn shrub that wants to snap and spray sap while you're doing it. This is not the plant you want to be cutting back when your neighbor's curious dog is sniffing around or your kids are playing in the yard. If what you actually want is that same thick, evergreen screening look without the one bite could stop a heart problem, swap it for a well-behaved native like wax myrtle, Morella cerifera. It gives you that dense, privacy hedge vibe, stays attractive, supports wildlife, and won't turn your trimmings into a toxic cleanup operation. Oleander is especially problematic in USDA hardiness zones 8 through 11, where it grows year-round and ends up right where people, pets, and livestock live their daily lives. Think of it as a beautiful welcome mat that's secretly a loaded bear trap. Number 2. Foxglove, the cottage garden assassin. Foxglove is the kind of plant that makes American gardeners fall in love on sight. Those tall flower spikes look straight out of a storybook. The speckled, bell-shaped blooms are absolutely gorgeous, and the seed packets practically promise you an instant English cottage garden, even if your yard is a basic suburban rectangle. Garden centers keep selling it because it's dramatic, it looks fancy without being fussy, and it fills vertical space like a pro. So people plant it near walkways, patios, and front doors where everyone can admire it up close. But here's the ugly truth. Foxglove is not just don't eat it toxic. This plant is loaded with powerful cardiac glycosides, the same kind of compounds used to make heart medication. Except in the yard, it's the Wild West. Every part of the plant is poisonous, especially the leaves. If a kid thinks those bells are cute and starts picking and playing, or a dog chews on leaves out of boredom, or your cat nibbles greenery like they sometimes do, you're suddenly dealing with a plant that can trigger nausea, weakness, dangerous heart rhythm changes, and a full-blown emergency. Even handling it can be an issue for some people because the hairs and sap can irritate skin. And the real danger is how easy it is to forget what it is once it's just another pretty flower in the bed. And the second you think, okay, I'll just pull it up, Foxglove shows you its other nasty trick. It loves to reseed. It can drop a ridiculous amount of tiny seeds, and those seeds can sprout all over the place. Cracks, edges, mulch, gravel paths, anywhere they can get a toehold. You remove one plant and feel proud, then next season you've got surprise foxgloves popping up where your kids play, where your dog rolls around, or right next to your veggie beds like it owns the place. And please don't toss it into your compost pile thinking it'll break down eventually. Now you've basically created a poison and seed distribution system you'll spread all around your yard later. If you love that tall spike of flowers and that soft, cottagey look, you can get the same vibe with a native that behaves and supports pollinators without turning your garden into a hazard zone. Foxglove beard tongue, also called Penstemon digitalis. It gives you upright white flower spikes. It's tough, it plays nicely with other plants, and it won't keep you up at night wondering what happens if the dog grabs a leaf. Foxglove tends to be especially problematic in USDA hardiness zones 4 through 9, where it thrives, reseeds easily, and quietly spreads right into the parts of your yard where people and pets actually live. Think of it as a beautiful chandelier hanging over your kitchen table, except every crystal is a tiny vial of poison. Number 3. Lily of the Valley, the sweet-scented yard takeover. Lily of the Valley is one of those grandma garden plants that people plant with total confidence because it looks so innocent. Tiny white bell flowers, that clean perfume smell, and those lush green leaves that promise a perfect little ground cover for shady spots where nothing else grows. It's sold everywhere, it's romantic in movies, and it feels like the kind of plant that could never cause trouble. So, homeowners tuck it along fences, under trees, beside patios, even near the front steps where kids and pets wander every single day. Now let me ruin that fantasy in about 10 seconds. This plant is poisonous, and it spreads like it's angry at your garden. Lily of the Valley contains cardiac glycosides, which means if a child puts berries in their mouth, or a dog chews leaves, or a cat nibbles the greenery, you're not dealing with a tummy ache situation. You're dealing with compounds that can mess with the heart rhythm. And those bright little berries that show up later? They're basically nature's way of baiting curiosity. On top of that, it doesn't just politely fill in. It expands through underground rhizomes, forming thick mats that muscle out everything else in its path, including the woodland natives you actually want in a shade garden. It's the kind of plant that turns a diverse bed into a single species carpet, and it does it quietly. One season you're admiring it, the next season you're realizing nothing else is coming up. And removal is where people really lose their minds. You can't just pull up the leaves and call it done, because the real plant is under the soil, running sideways like buried extension cords. If you leave even small chunks of rhizome behind, it comes right back. And it comes back smug. Digging it out means sifting soil, chasing runners, and repeating the process because it will resprout from leftovers you didn't even see. And do not toss it in the compost pile unless you want to gift your entire yard with lily of the valley later. Those rhizome pieces can survive and restart when you spread compost, turning one bad patch into 10. If you want that same shady, low-growing woodland look with delicate white blooms without the toxic invasive headache, plant Canada Mayflower, Myanthemum canadense, a well-behaved native ground cover that gives a similar soft woodland vibe and plays nicely with everything around it. Lily of the Valley is especially problematic in USDA hardiness zones 3 through 8, where it survives winter easily and spreads aggressively year after year. Think of it as a tiny, perfumed pickpocket that smiles at you while it steals your whole garden. Number 4. Pokeweed, the backyard berry trap. Pokeweed is one of those plants that shows up and people hesitate, because at first glance it almost looks useful. It grows fast. It's got those huge, tropical-looking leaves, and then it throws out these dramatic purple stems and dangling clusters of dark, juicy-looking berries that scream wildlife-friendly and rustic homestead charm. A lot of folks let it stay because they've heard birds love it, or they assume it's some kind of harmless wild grape situation, or they've seen old-timers talk about poke salad and think it's basically an edible volunteer. But here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. Pokeweed is a poison plant that spreads like it's getting paid per square foot. The berries, leaves, stems, and especially the root are toxic to people and pets. And those berries are exactly the problem, because they look like a snack. Kids see berries and their brains go straight to taste testing. Dogs will chomp anything that smells interesting. And once those seeds get into the system, it's bad news. On top of that, pokeweed is a seed factory. Birds eat the berries and then politely redecorate your entire property with pokeweed seeds. So you don't just get one plant. You get a surprise pop-up pokeweed party in your beds, along the fence line, beside the shed, and somehow dead center in your nicest flower border. Now let's talk removal, because this is where pokeweed laughs at people. You pull the top growth and think you won, and then it comes roaring back, because that root is a thick, carrot-like taproot that can be massive, deep, and stubborn. If you don't get that root out, it resprouts like a monster in a horror movie sequel, bigger, tougher, and more determined. And if you try to just chop it down all summer, it'll keep throwing up new shoots until it finally sets berries again and restarts the whole cycle. Also, do not toss those berry clusters into your compost pile unless you want to plant pokeweed on purpose later, because the seeds can survive and you'll end up spreading them exactly where you don't want them. If what you love is that bold look and those showy berry clusters for wildlife, swap it for American beautyberry, Calicarpa americana, a well-behaved native shrub with stunning purple berries that looks intentional instead of feral and doesn't come with the same mystery berry poisoning drama. Pokeweed is especially problematic in USDA hardiness zones 3 through 10, where it can thrive, reseed aggressively, and keep coming back year after year if you give it even a tiny chance. Think of it as a glittery, berry-covered Trojan horse that rolls into your yard and unloads a whole army when you're not looking. Number 5. Jimsonweed, the hallucination weed from hell. Jimsonweed is one of those plants that sneaks into American yards like it belongs there. Big, leafy growth, fast filler in neglected corners, and then it pops off these huge, trumpet-shaped white or purple flowers that look weirdly exotic, almost like a backyard moonflower. Some folks even leave it on purpose because it looks cool. It seems to thrive when everything else struggles, and it shows up so confidently that people assume it must be some harmless wildflower doing its thing. But Jimsonweed is not a wildflower friend. It's a dangerously toxic plant packed with powerful tropane alkaloids that can cause severe poisoning in humans and pets. And it's especially scary because the seeds are the worst part. This isn't might upset your stomach toxic. This is confusion, agitation, dangerously high heart rate, overheating, seizures, hallucinations, and potentially death toxic. And it doesn't just sit there being poisonous either. It spreads by pumping out loads of spiky seed pods that dry, crack open, and scatter a ridiculous number of seeds into your soil. Then you get wave after wave of new plants popping up in flower beds, along fences, in gravel, in veggie gardens, anywhere the soil gets disturbed. It's basically a self-replicating poison problem. And here's where it turns into a full-blown nightmare. If you let it go to seed even once, you're not dealing with a one-season issue anymore. Those seeds can persist in the soil and keep germinating for years, which means you'll pull one plant and think you're done, then next summer, it's back like it never left. And when you do remove it, you have to be smart about it. Gloves on, don't rub your eyes, don't let pets sniff the pile, and absolutely do not toss those seed pods into your compost. Compost doesn't magically neutralize a toxic plant or guarantee the seeds are dead. And the last thing you want is to spread Jimsonweed seeds all over your beds like you're seasoning your yard with chaos. If what you really wanted was that dramatic trumpet flower look without the danger, go with a well-behaved native like trumpet honeysuckle, Lanicera sempervirens. It gives you bold, tubular blooms that hummingbirds love. It looks intentional, and it won't turn your garden into a poisoning risk and a seed bank disaster. Jimsonweed is especially problematic in USDA hardiness zones 4 through 10, where it thrives in summer heat and reappears aggressively anywhere the soil gets disturbed. Think of it as a pretty party balloon filled with poison gas. Looks harmless until the second it pops.
Number 6. Monkshood, Wolfsbane. The fairy tale flower with a body count. Monkshood, also called Wolfsbane, is one of those plants that feels like a total flex in the garden. Those deep, purple-blue hooded flowers look straight out of a medieval painting. It screams rare and sophisticated, and gardeners get sucked in because it's dramatic in shade. It looks amazing in photos, and it has that mysterious, old-world vibe that makes people think it must be some fancy, harmless perennial. You'll even see it recommended for woodland borders, like it's just another pretty bloom to tuck in near a walkway. But monkshood is not a cute little woodland accent. It's one of the most poisonous ornamentals you can grow, and it's toxic in a way that's genuinely terrifying because the sap and roots are loaded with aconitine, a potent neurotoxin and cardiotoxin. This isn't a don't eat it plant. This is a don't mess with it casually plant. Even skin contact can be dangerous if the sap gets into a cut or you rub your eyes after handling it. Pets can get into trouble just by chewing on it, and kids are the real nightmare scenario because the flowers are so weirdly inviting to touch and pick. Symptoms can come on fast and can include numbness, burning sensations, vomiting, serious heart rhythm problems, and respiratory failure. It's literally the kind of plant that has a reputation in folklore for a reason, and once you decide it has to go, you find out it doesn't leave gracefully. The root system can be chunky and persistent, and you can't treat the cleanup like normal garden waste. You need gloves, long sleeves, and you want to bag everything like it's hazardous, because leaving bits behind or letting pets rummage through a pile is asking for trouble. And do not toss monkshood into your compost pile, because compost is a redistribution program. You're basically turning a toxic plant into a yard-wide surprise later,
whether through leftover plant material or accidental spread when you move compost around. The safest move is careful removal and disposal, not chop and drop. If you want that same tall, cool-toned, dramatic flower spike without the "why is this legal to sell" panic, choose a native like Great Blue Lobelia, Lobelia syphilitica. It gives you that bold, blue-purple pop. It thrives in many gardens, it supports pollinators, and it won't put your family on edge every time someone walks past it. Monkshood is especially problematic in USDA hardiness zones 3 through 7, where it survives winter easily and can sit in the garden for years, quietly waiting for one careless moment. Think of it as a gorgeous velvet curtain hiding a live electrical wire. Beautiful until the second you touch it wrong. Number 7. Water Hemlock, the ditch-side plant that can kill you fast. Water hemlock shows up in the exact places busy American homeowners love to ignore: along a creek bank, in a low, soggy corner of the yard, near a drainage ditch, around a pond, or right where the downspouts dump water. And the reason people don't panic immediately is because it doesn't look like a villain. It looks like a harmless wildflower with pretty white umbrella-shaped blooms, kind of like Queen Anne's lace. And it blends in with other tall greenery so well that folks assume it's just part of the landscape doing its thing. Sometimes people even leave it because it looks natural, and they like the idea of letting the back edge of the property go a little wild. But this one is not a leave it for the bees situation. Water hemlock is widely considered one of the most poisonous plants in North America, and it's toxic in the scariest way possible. A tiny mistake can turn into a full-blown emergency. The plant contains a potent toxin that attacks the nervous system, and ingestion can cause violent seizures and rapid collapse in humans and animals. Dogs that splash through wet areas and chew stems, kids who pick flowers, livestock that graze near wet ground. This is a nightmare scenario, and it happens because the plant looks so normal. It also loves wet, disturbed soil, so if you've got any consistently damp spot that gets mowed, edged, or scraped, it can keep coming back and reseeding. And once it's established, it doesn't just sit politely in one clump. Seeds drop, wash, and spread, and you can end up with patches popping up along the entire wet zone like a toxic parade. And removing it is where you have to get deadly serious, because the root area is the worst part. You can't just grab and yank with bare hands like it's a dandelion, and you definitely don't want to snap stems and fling plant juices around while you're working. The plant can regrow if you leave root pieces behind, and if you pull it while it's flowering or setting seed, you can accidentally help it spread. And whatever you do, don't toss this into your compost pile. Compost is where problems become everywhere, and the last thing you want is to spread poisonous plant material or surviving seeds into your garden beds later like it's free fertilizer. If what you really want is that tall, showy, white-flowering presence in a wet area without the life-or-death risk, plant buttonbush, Cephalanthus occidentalis. It's a gorgeous native shrub that thrives in damp soil, looks intentional, supports pollinators, and gives you a big, bright white bloom display that won't make you nervous every time your dog runs near the water. Water hemlock is especially problematic in USDA hardiness zones 3 through 10, anywhere you've got wet ground, seasonal flooding, or drainage that stays moist long enough for it to settle in. Think of it as a beautiful roadside bouquet that's actually a loaded mousetrap for your whole household. Number 8. Deadly Nightshade, Belladonna. The shiny black berry that's basically a dare. Belladonna is one of those plants that can fool even smart, careful American gardeners because it doesn't look scary. It's got those droopy, bell-shaped purple flowers. It can look kind of cottage garden charming. And then it sets these glossy, purple-black berries that, honestly, look like something you'd see on a cute little ornamental shrub. People plant it out of curiosity, for the goth garden vibe, or because they saw it online and thought it was just another unusual perennial. And because it's been grown historically as a medicinal plant, some folks assume it's dangerous if you eat a lot, like it's the same category as an unripe elderberry or something. That assumption is where the trouble starts. Here's the dark side. Every part of Belladonna is toxic, and the berries are especially dangerous because they can taste a little sweet and look tempting, especially to kids. This plant contains potent tropane alkaloids like atropine and scopolamine that can trigger the classic anticholinergic poisoning picture: confusion, agitation, hallucinations, dangerously fast heart rate, overheating, and seizures. In other words, it's not call poison control just in case scary. It's do not let this exist where your family or pets can reach it scary. And even if you're thinking, fine, I'll just pull it, Belladonna can turn into a removal headache because it's a perennial with a substantial root system and it reproduces by seed. If those berries drop, you can end up with surprise seedlings later, and birds can help move the problem around. The biggest nightmare is treating it like normal garden cleanup, snapping stems, getting sap on your skin, then rubbing your face, or tossing berries and plant pieces into a compost pile where you might accidentally spread seeds when you use that compost later. This is one of those plants where you remove it carefully, bag it, and get it out of your life. No shortcuts. If what you actually wanted was that moody, dark berry wow factor, without planting a literal poison hazard, go with black chokeberry, Aronia melanocarpa, a well-behaved native shrub with beautiful white blooms and dark berries that birds love, plus incredible fall color. 0 sinister surprises. Belladonna is especially problematic in USDA hardiness zones 5 through 9, where it can overwinter, mature reliably, and keep the risk hanging around year after year. Think of it as a bowl of candy left on the porch, except every single piece is a prank you can't take back.
Number 9. Angel's Trumpet, Brugmansia. The perfume bomb that can poison your whole house. Angel's Trumpet is the kind of plant that makes people stop in their tracks at the nursery. Those massive, dangling trumpet flowers look unreal, like something from a tropical resort, and the scent at night can be so strong it feels like the whole yard turns into a fancy perfume counter. Homeowners buy it because it grows fast, it screams instant drama, and it gives you that lush, exotic look without feeling complicated. And let's be honest, it gets marketed like a dream plant for patios. Big blooms, big vibes, big wow. But the dark side of Brugmansia is not subtle. Every single part of this plant is dangerously toxic. And I mean the leaves, the flowers, the seeds, the sap, all of it. It contains powerful tropane alkaloids that can cause severe poisoning. Confusion, agitation, hallucinations, dangerously fast heart rate, overheating, and in serious cases, seizures and coma. And the reason it's such a nightmare in a real American yard is because it's a touchable plant. The flowers hang right at kid height. Pets brush up against it. People deadhead it. You put it near the porch because it smells amazing at night, which is exactly where your family and your dog are hanging out. It's basically designed to be interacted with, and that's what makes it so risky. Then comes the part where people try to get rid of it and realize it's not like pulling up a marigold. In warm climates, it can become a woody, trunky shrub or small tree. And once it's established, you're dealing with thick stems and a serious root system. If you cut it back, it can resprout. If you leave stumps or root pieces, it can try to come back. And because the whole plant is toxic, cleanup isn't casual. This is gloves, long sleeves, careful handling, and keeping the debris far away from curious hands and mouths. And do not throw trimmings into your compost pile, because compost is where yard waste gets handled, turned, moved, and spread later. And the last thing you want is toxic plant material or seeds hitching a ride into every bed you've got.
If what you really want is that giant, jaw-dropping flower show without the "why is this in my yard" danger, go with a native like hardy hibiscus, also called swamp rose mallow, Hibiscus mosquitos. It gives you those huge, tropical-looking blooms. It's a pollinator magnet, it behaves like a normal garden plant, and it won't turn your patio into a poison risk zone. Angel's Trumpet is especially problematic in USDA hardiness zones 9 through 11, where it can live year-round, grow into a big, woody monster, and stay within arm's reach of people and pets every single day. Think of it as a gorgeous, sweet-smelling candle, made of pure chaos with a toxic wick. Number 10. Castor Bean, the spiky beauty that hides a lethal secret. Castor bean is one of those plants that people plant because it looks like a Hollywood version of tropical. Huge glossy leaves, bold red stems, and those wild, spiky seed pods that make it look like an exotic statement plant you'd see in a fancy landscape magazine. A lot of American gardeners grab it for quick height and instant drama, and honestly, garden centers have sold it for years like it's just another ornamental, especially for big containers and back-of-the-border wow factor. It grows fast, it looks expensive, and it makes people feel like they're pulling off a botanical masterpiece in one season. But here's the part that turns castor bean into an absolute nightmare. It contains ricin, one of the most infamous plant toxins on Earth. And the scariest part is how normal it looks while it's sitting there in your yard. The seeds are the main danger, and they're especially tempting because they're smooth, shiny, and kind of bean-like. Exactly the kind of thing a child might pick up and pocket, or a dog might chew out of curiosity. Even a small amount can cause a severe poisoning emergency, with intense vomiting and diarrhea, dehydration, organ damage, and potentially death. This isn't "keep it away from the kids" risky. This is "why would you keep this on your property" risky. And it doesn't stop at being toxic. Castor bean can also spread aggressively in warmer areas because it produces tons of seeds, and those seeds can drop, roll, wash, and sprout wherever they land. If you let it go to seed, you're basically planting next year's problem all over your yard, your neighbor's yard, and any disturbed soil nearby. It can turn into a self-seeding menace that pops up in flower beds, along fences, and in veggie gardens like an uninvited guest that refuses to take the hint.
Now let's talk removal, because this is where you need to get serious. You don't want to yank it out barehanded and toss the seed pods around like confetti. You want gloves, long sleeves, and careful handling, especially if there are mature seed pods present. Bag the pods immediately so nothing drops, and do not put any part of this plant into your compost pile. Compost is where you spread things, and the last thing you want is to spread toxic seeds or volunteer seedlings into every garden bed you touch later. If you've got kids, pets, or livestock anywhere near this plant, it should be treated like a hazardous material cleanup, not regular garden chores. If what you really loved was that big, bold, tropical leaf look, swap it for a native that gives the same drama without the danger, like American beautyberry, Calicarpa americana, for bold presence and wildlife value. Or, if you want giant leaves specifically, try a native like compass plant, Silphium laciniatum, for a strong architectural statement in the landscape. Castor bean is especially problematic in USDA hardiness zones 8 through 11, where it can self-seed readily and persist as an ongoing hazard year after year. Think of it as a gorgeous, decorative grenade sitting in your flower bed, just waiting for someone curious to pull the pin. Number 11. Autumn crocus, the fall bloomer that bites back. Autumn crocus is the kind of plant that makes American gardeners feel like geniuses. It pops up when everything else is fading, throwing out these pretty pink to lavender flowers right when you're desperate for color, and it does it with almost zero effort. Nurseries love selling it because it feels rare and special,
It naturalizes, it's low maintenance, and it gives that magical surprise bloom in early fall when your neighbor's beds are looking tired. People tuck it along walkways, under shrubs, in lawn edges, and in those little set it and forget it spots, because, honestly, it seems so harmless. And that's the trap. Autumn crocus, also known as meadow saffron, colchicum, is seriously poisonous. It contains colchicine, a toxin that can be deadly if ingested, and the danger is that it doesn't look dangerous at all. Kids see pretty flowers and want to pick them. Dogs sniff and chew. Cats nibble leaves. And here's where it gets extra nasty. People confuse it with edible crocus, or even wild garlic-type foliage at different times of year, because the leaves often show up in spring when the flowers aren't even there. That means someone can accidentally mess with it, or even try to eat the wrong plant, thinking they're being forager smart. And that mistake can turn into severe vomiting, diarrhea, organ failure, and a trip to the ER fast. Then there's the way it spreads and sticks around. Autumn crocus grows from corms, and those corms multiply. So that cute little clump you planted, it can quietly expand over time into a bigger patch, especially in beds that don't get disturbed much. And because the leaves and flowers show up at different times, it's easy to forget where it is, mow around it, weed whack near it, or have pets rooting through the area when you're not paying attention. It's not the fastest runner in the world, but it's sneaky, persistent, and it's a problem because the toxicity never goes away. Removal is where people get frustrated and sloppy is the last thing you want with a poisonous bulb. You've got to dig out the corms, and you have to get them all, because any corms left behind can resprout and multiply again, and you absolutely do not want to toss those corms into the compost pile. Compost is basically a second chance machine for bulbs. You spread that compost later, and suddenly you've replanted a toxic surprise right where your kids play, or where you grow vegetables. Bag it, dispose of it properly, and don't leave pieces lying around where pets can grab them. If what you really want is that late-season pop of color without planting a toxin landmine, go with a native like New England aster, Symphyretrichum novae anglii. It blooms in fall, looks incredible, feeds pollinators, and it's the kind of plant you can actually relax around. Autumn crocus is especially problematic in USDA hardiness zones 4 through 8, where it overwinters easily and can persist and multiply in the same spot for years. Think of it as a pretty little surprise gift wrapped around a live electrical wire.
Number 12. English Yew, the classy hedge with a deadly side hustle. English yew is one of those plants that gets planted because it looks expensive and well-behaved. It's dark green, perfectly trimmable, evergreen all winter, and it gives that fancy old estate look like you've got a professional landscaper on speed dial. Homeowners love it for privacy hedges and foundation plantings because it's dense, it makes clean shapes, and it doesn't scream for attention. It just quietly makes the yard look finished. And because it's been used in landscaping forever, people assume it's safe. Like, if it's that common, it can't be that bad, right? Here's the problem. Yew is extremely toxic, and it's toxic in the worst way, fast and serious. The needles, bark, seeds, and basically everything except the red jelly-like berry flesh are poisonous. And the seed inside that red berry is especially dangerous. If a kid pops those berries in their mouth, or a dog chews on the branches, or a horse nibbles clippings that blew into a pasture, you're suddenly dealing with a plant that can mess with the heart and nervous system, and it can turn into a life or death emergency. And it doesn't just sit there being toxic. Birds eat those red berries and spread the seeds, so you can end up with little volunteer yews popping up where you never planted them, like a slow-moving poison hedge trying to multiply behind your back. Now let's talk removal, because this is where the pretty hedge turns into a yard nightmare. Mature yews can have thick, stubborn roots and woody crowns that don't come out easily. And if you cut them down instead of digging them out, they can push new growth from the base and try to come right back.
and the cleanup is not casual. You do not want piles of yew clippings where pets can sniff, chew, or roll around. And you definitely don't want to toss trimmings into your compost pile like it's normal yard waste. Compost turns one dangerous plant into tiny, dangerous pieces everywhere. And yew is not the kind of plant you want accidentally spreading around your property through mulch and compost later. If what you want is that same evergreen privacy screen that looks polished and intentional, swap it for a native like American holly, Ilex opaca. It's evergreen, it can be shaped, it supports wildlife in a good way, and it doesn't come with the same one bad bite panic. English yew is especially problematic in USDA hardiness zones 4 through 7, where it thrives as a long-lived landscape plant and keeps that toxicity risk sitting in your yard year after year. Think of it as a gorgeous velvet rope outside a fancy club, except the rope is electrified, and your kids and pets are the ones reaching for it. Number 13. Poison hemlock, the pretty wildflower that's actually a death trap. Poison hemlock is one of the most dangerous plants that slips into American yards because it doesn't look scary at first. It's tall, leafy, and lacy like a harmless carrot relative. And when it blooms, it throws up those delicate white umbrella flowers that look like Queen Anne's lace. People let it stay because it looks natural. It fills in the back fence line. It shows up along trails and ditches everywhere. And they assume it's just another roadside wildflower doing its thing. Sometimes they even cut it for a wildflower bouquet, which is where this goes from bad to nightmare in a hurry. Because poison hemlock isn't just toxic, it's lethal. Every part of the plant contains dangerous alkaloids that can cause severe poisoning, and it doesn't take much. Ingestion can lead to trembling, weakness, paralysis, breathing failure, and death. And the biggest danger is how easily it can be mistaken for edible plants like wild carrot, parsley, or parsnip if you're not trained. It also spreads aggressively by seed, producing huge numbers that drop into soil and pop up again and again, especially in disturbed areas like fence lines, field edges, construction fill, and anywhere you've got bare soil. So if you've got one plant this year, you're not looking at a one-time problem. You're looking at a seed pipeline that can keep refilling your yard for years.
And removal is where people get hurt, because they treat it like a normal weed. This is not a whack-it-with-the-weed-eater-in-shorts plant. Sap can irritate skin, and chopping it spreads plant juices and can scatter seeds if it's mature. You need gloves, long sleeves, and careful bagging, and you want to remove it before it sets seed if possible. And absolutely do not throw it into your compost pile. Compost doesn't guarantee seeds are destroyed, and the last thing you want is to spread poison hemlock all over your beds when you top dress next spring. If it's a big infestation, this is one of those times where calling your local extension office for safe removal guidance is not overkill. It's smart. If what you want is that same airy, white, lacy bloom look without the deadly risk, plant a native like common yarrow, Achillea millefolium. It gives you flat-topped white flower clusters. It's pollinator-friendly, it behaves, and it won't put your family in danger just by existing near the driveway. Poison hemlock is especially problematic in USDA hardiness zones 3 through 10, anywhere you've got disturbed soil, roadsides, ditches, and neglected edges where it can seed in and take over. Think of it as a lace doily covering a loaded handgun. Pretty from a distance, deadly the second you get close. Number 14. Mountain laurel, the pretty shrub that plays dirty. Mountain laurel is one of those plants homeowners buy because it looks like an instant classy upgrade. Glossy evergreen leaves, those insane clusters of pink and white flowers that look like little porcelain candy, and every label at the nursery makes it sound like a rugged, low-maintenance native that'll thrive on its own. It gets marketed as the perfect foundation shrub, the perfect woodland border plant, the perfect, I want privacy but make it pretty hedge. And because it's so beloved in parts of the US, people assume it's automatically safe to have right by the porch, the kids' play area, and the dog's favorite zoomy path.
But here's the part that turns mountain laurel into a real yard nightmare. It's poisonous. The leaves, flowers, nectar, this plant is loaded with toxins that can hit pets and livestock hard. And it can make people sick, too, if anyone's unlucky enough to ingest it. Dogs that chew leaves, goats that browse, kids who mess with flowers and then put fingers in their mouth. This is not a maybe risk. It's a why are we letting this sit next to daily life risk. And it doesn't just sit there politely looking pretty either. In the right conditions, it forms dense, shaded thickets that crowd out other plants, steals light, and creates that dead, barren zone underneath where nothing you actually want will grow. It's the kind of shrub that turns a bed into a one-plant monopoly, and it does it while looking innocent. And when you decide you're done with it, mountain laurel doesn't go quietly. It can have a tough, woody crown and a stubborn root system that clings to the soil, especially if it's been there a while. Cut it down, and you're often left with a stump that wants to keep living, plus a mess of tough branches that are miserable to handle. Digging it out can feel like wrestling a hardwood octopus, and if you leave pieces behind or let it keep any living crown tissue, it can push back with new growth when you least expect it. And please don't toss the trimmings into your compost pile. Compost is where yard waste gets handled, turned, and spread later. And the last thing you want is to distribute toxic plant material around the same yard you're trying to make safer. If what you want is that same evergreen structure with showy springtime white blooms, but without the toxicity drama, swap it for inkberry holly, Ilex glabra, a well-behaved native evergreen that gives you that thick, polished landscape look and won't make you panic if a pet chews on a leaf. Mountain laurel is especially problematic in USDA hardiness zones 4 through 9, where it thrives as a long-lived shrub and keeps that poisoning risk parked in your yard year after year. Think of it as a beautiful front door decoration that's secretly coated in do not touch warning labels.
Number 15. Wisteria, the porch-eating vine with a velvet glove. Wisteria is the plant that seduces American homeowners harder than almost anything else. Those cascading purple blooms look like a fairy tale. It smells amazing. It turns any boring pergola into an Instagram moment, and every spring you see it draped over cottages and garden arches like it's the definition of romantic backyard goals. Nurseries still sell it, neighbors brag about it, and people plant it thinking they're getting a classy flowering vine that'll politely behave if they just prune it once in a while. And then the mask comes off. Wisteria isn't a cute vine. It's a muscular climber that can grow aggressively and put on serious woody weight fast. It spreads by twining stems that wrap tighter and tighter around whatever they touch, and it can also spread by runners and by seed pods that fling the next generation into your yard. Once it gets going, it doesn't just cover a trellis, it tries to claim the whole neighborhood. It can climb into trees and shade them out until branches die back, and it can literally pull structures apart over time because those thick stems act like living cables. Fences, railings, porch posts, gutters, even small trees can end up warped, strangled, or snapped. And on top of that, the seeds and pods are toxic if eaten, which is a huge issue when you've got curious kids and pets wandering around under a shower of bean-like pods. Now let's talk removal, because this is where wisteria becomes a full-on nightmare. Cutting the vines doesn't kill it, it just makes it angrier. You can chop it down to the ground, and it'll respond by sending up new shoots like it's respawning in a video game. The root system can be deep and stubborn, and if you leave any root chunks behind, it keeps coming. And those vines you cut off? Do not toss them into the compost pile like harmless yard waste. Pieces can re-root in moist conditions, and if there are seed pods, you're basically storing a future infestation. Getting rid of wisteria is usually a multi-season fight, not a weekend project. And that's exactly why you remove it the second you realize what you're dealing with.
If you want that same jaw-dropping, drooping flower look without unleashing a structural wrecking ball, go with American Wisteria, Wisteria frutescens, a well-behaved native that still gives you gorgeous blooms but doesn't try to strangle your trees and peel your porch off the house. Wisteria is especially problematic in USDA hardiness zones 5 through 9, where it grows vigorously, overwhelms structures, and can keep spreading and resprouting year after year. Think of it as a beautiful silk ribbon that's actually a boa constrictor with flowers. If this video helped you spot a few dangerous plants hiding in your yard, remember, nature is powerful, but with the right knowledge, you can make your home a lot safer for your family, your pets, and even your garden itself. Take a few minutes this week to walk around your yard and really look at what's growing there. Sometimes the most beautiful plants can also be the most harmful, and removing them now can prevent a lot of trouble later. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more simple, practical tips about natural living, safe gardening, and old-fashioned homesteading wisdom, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new video. And if you found one of these plants in your yard, let us know down in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. Thanks for watching, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next video.